Welcome to Moments with Marianne. I'm so delighted we're spending this time here today. We have a very inspiring show coming right up with two very special guests. Our first guest today is Sherrie Dillard, and she's here to share with us her new book, I'm Still With You. Communicate, heal, and evolve with your loved one on the other side. Now, Sherrie has been a professional psychic, medium, and therapist for over 30 years, and she's given over 50,000 readings worldwide. She taught intuition development at Duke University Continuing Studies and has led workshops and classes internationally. Sherrie's been featured on radio and television for her work as a psychic detective, and she holds a Master of Divinity degree in New Thought Pastoral Counseling. So let's welcome to the show, Sherrie Dillard.
Hi, Marianne. Thank you so much for having me.
You know, what an honor it is to have you here and to talk about this book. I know we've had you on the show before to talk about your other great books. What inspired you to write this one?
Well, it was a little bit twofold. Initially I wasn't actually planning on writing this book, and I got a very strong kind of intuitive sense that this was the book that I needed to write, which I think that in part, not knowing, of course, because that was a couple years ago when I first started it, that this would be a time where, collectively we're finding ourselves experiencing a fair amount of grief, both, with our loved ones who may or may not be suffering with the virus, or ourselves. And also, it's triggering loss and grief with people also. Even if we have no one in our family who's suffering and we haven't suffered, the collective awareness that we have now of suffering and passing over is much stronger than normal. And it's triggering a lot of people with past losses. And so this book is a lot about, it's all about what that's all about for us and for our loved ones on the other side. And I really drew from my 35 years of connecting and communicating with the other side, and, kind of just shared things that I've learned along the way and what they may be experiencing, what we experience with grief, and hoping to kind of help people through these difficult passages.
Yeah, it does seem just about everyone I know knows somebody who's transitioned or going through a transition. So there's no one that's, spared any of this, especially during this time. So your book couldn't be any more timely than it is now. What are some of the things that you found kind of surprising that you wrote the book on, and here we are in the time that we are, and it seems to be all correlating?
Well, I think part of it right now is that, we're in such a incredible time of transformation and difficulties and challenges. And one of the things, I guess, that's surprising in a way, but maybe not so much, just because I do work with a lot of grief with people, is I feel like we need a deeper understanding. And we haven't had it as a culture about passing over and what that means to us, the changes that we experience with that. When my mother passed over quite a while ago, I think it was probably almost 20 years now, I remember going through it, and before she passed over, I could feel her spirit. I could feel her leaving the body. I could feel the changes that it was kind of amazing, the changes I felt in myself, that I had no idea that was going to happen. And I thought, why doesn't anyone tell you these things are going to happen? I've never heard this before, what I was actually experiencing and the difficulties of grieving, and how, as a more spiritually minded person, that energy can be, obviously it's a time of great sadness and grief and loss, but there's also something else happening during that time that can open us in different ways and bring forth transformation. And I kind of wanted to not just put down, this is what happens, but to really allow people and to give exercises and different things in the book that would help people to process this for themselves a little better and to come to maybe some transformative awareness for themselves as they continue their journey. You know, our loved ones continue their soul evolvement and journey on the other side, but we also continue our journey here. And we need tools to do that a little bit better. And so I think what I'm seeing some now with people, with my clients who, like you said, you know, everybody either knows someone who's been very ill or who's passed over, is that we're kind of more open for that. We're more hungry for that than we've been in the past. That door has been kind of more open for us. And I think that the book can provide some, some more thorough kind of soulful understanding about that. And I guess I didn't expect that. When I wrote that, I was kind of feeling like, well, now, isn't that interesting? I'm writing that. I don't have any idea how this is going to be taken by people because it didn't seem to be part of our conversation, even about mediums. You know, a lot of what I've read in the past about, that from mediums and from the whole process from that standpoint has been more about, the communication that our loved ones are happy and that they live on, which is obviously great information. But this was what I wrote was that, but it was a little different too. It was really more, this is the process that we all go through. And it's about the loss, but it's also about us and our process. And to answer your question, I feel like that's something that can help us now, is to know that what we are experiencing collectively is not, it's not just happening to someone else, even if we're not directly impacted, it's happening to us too. Everything is shifting, and we have to, the more aware we can be of that and meet it with tools for transformation, I not only will we thrive better and, come to a different place within us and express that outwardly in our everyday life, but it's going to help others too. It'll kind of lift that vibration for everybody.
That's such an important factor because I think a lot of people, there is a lot of fear when we talk about, the death or transition process. Mm-hmm. And so why don't you share with us a little bit, what it's like on the other side? I mean, are our loved ones eager to communicate with us? Because I think people think that only happens if they connect with a psychic medium.
Right.
It's not like something that could be a daily occurrence.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And that's one reason I didn't want to write. I wrote a book in the past, You Are a Medium, that's about developing kind of more of the skills and abilities of being a medium. But I didn't want to do that in this book because we experience and we connect with our loved ones, and we don't have to be mediums. It's a natural process that we go through, that everyone goes through, that has lost someone, in that ability to connect. Now, we're not always aware that we're doing that, but a lot of times we are, but we just don't have the confirmation, and we don't have anybody to share those things with that can say, yeah, that really sounds like you're connecting. So I've talked to a lot of people, and it's kind of this little tucked away secret. Well, yeah, I do feel my loved one with me, but they don't necessarily share that with others or always believe it themselves either. But, the physical and the spiritual realm is not as distant. It's not as far away as we think. I mean, it's actually, we're part of that realm. We're just in a physical vibration of it. We think of it as something very different, and it is. Our experience of it is very, very different. But yet at the same time, our loved ones are always around us. They're not in our physical vibration, so we can't touch them, see them, in that physical way. But we can still, we can feel them, not not in a, five senses kind of way, but in a spiritual way, we can feel and see them. Some people, but you don't even have to be able to do that to connect with them. A lot of times our loved ones connect with us through simple things like, dreams sometimes. And it doesn't even mean they're in the dream. We can just feel a sense of their love. I think the most common way that our loved ones connect with us, which we completely ignore most of the time, because we think it has to be kind of this big dramatic kind of, theatrical movie kind of thing. And it's not, is simply feeling their love, simply feeling loved and comforted, or feeling that they're in a good place. Just that awareness of that most of the time is our loved one really close to us, sharing that with us, sitting with us, trying as hard as they can to project and to give us that awareness that they are close, they are present, but they do it primarily through emotion, through feeling. And that's one of the big differences between being a professional medium and being connected with your own loved ones and friends and, neighbors, all of anybody, is that a medium like myself, when I connect with a loved one for someone else, I have no idea, who they are at the beginning. I have to kind of feel their presence and talk to them and, look at them and get a sense of what they look like and share that and other information. But when it's my own loved ones, because I have a few family members that are over, several, I don't see them like that. I don't, it's so different for me personally, is that I feel them. I can feel their love. I can feel their presence, but it's more emotional. It's more in the heart. It's more of an experience that kind of really goes to your soul, and you can feel it. And I don't have that experience when I connect with other people's loved ones. I can certainly feel their love and appreciate it, but I don't have a profound, or not always even profound, but just simply a sense that, yeah, they're okay. They're with me. I can feel that. Or to hear some advice, they're giving me about something. We downplay that because we think that's our own thoughts and our own ideas. A lot of times that's actually, our loved ones trying to give us advice, but the way they do it is through, kind of our own thoughts. So, like I said, I feel like the things not to ignore and the hardest things maybe to think, oh yeah, that's really my loved one, is the feeling level of it, the comfort. And to kind of, if people can kind of just say, yeah, maybe that is them. Maybe that really is my loved one, and open more to that and get out of their heads with it, that experience will expand and broaden, and other, that will kind of like strengthen that connection, that intuitive connection. So you'll start to feel and get and receive more and more connection with them that can start to come in other ways too. But it's to trust that, open more to it, and let it kind of expand without overthinking it.
So when we go through the death process, a lot of times I think people want to know, do we actually suffer? Is there a
Right.
lot of suffering going on?
Yeah, that's one of the things I talk about right away, is that's the thing that really sticks with people the most. Years and years later, people will just still be concerned and fearful that their loved one, they remember the pain their loved one was in. That sticks with us a long time. And the pain, physical pain, in the book I say that one of the big surprises about death is that, in dying, is it doesn't feel like death and dying when you're going through it. It looks that way to us that are still in the physical, but for the person experiencing that, it doesn't feel, the pain is very quickly, it just dissolves. The spirit doesn't feel pain. And our life force energy goes from the physical body to the spirit energy, to our spirit, our soul. And there is no pain. There's no fearful thoughts. There's no trauma. There's no, excruciating kind of experience in the soul. It immediately, as the energy gathers into the soul, our physical senses, even before we pass out of the body, the whole process of dying is the process of the spirit, of life force energy accumulating in our soul, our spirit, and moving out of the physical. And so that completely nullifies any feeling we have, because we can't feel pain then. We just don't feel pain. We start to feel love, and we start to become aware of our loved ones who are already on the other side. Or, some people will experience, if they have a pet, they'll feel the pet that maybe had passed over, or some will feel a higher divine being or an angel. And that happens usually before we pass out of the body. We become aware of that. So the bridge to passing over is actually one of love and not pain. And the pain that we suffer at the very end, and I won't, obviously some people do when we see them, in that process, it looks painful. And there is some pain as long as we're in the body, but it's quickly, it doesn't linger. It doesn't stay with us in our mind either. It's quickly dissolved, and only love exists. So our loved ones don't feel what we think they feel. Even if it's quick, the spirit usually leaves the body before the physical body passes over. So a physical body might still be going through the process of death, dying, and there might still be a pulse and a slight breath, but the spirit's no longer there. The spirit is usually already out of the body and right next to it, or looking down on it, or with their loved ones. But very rarely, in fact, I don't think I've ever talked to anybody in spirit who it looked like a traumatic passing, but stayed in the body for it. The spirit's wise. The spirit knows what's happening, and will leave the body before a traumatic injury or something like that, or passing.
So let's talk about communication that we have with our loved ones on the other side. What are some indications that we're getting that, and different ways that shows up?
Like I was talking a moment ago, that part of it is the emotional connection we feel with them. And that's not the only thing, though. A lot of times it actually will come in as synchronicities and signs. Our loved ones love doing that. They have so much fun. They're so playful in that way. And they feel so successful when they are able to get a sign to us and we notice it, we see it. A lot of times initially, as very quickly after someone passes, within the a few months or weeks or maybe longer, but initially one of the strongest signs is through electricity, lights kind of dimming. I say electricity, but it could be like battery operated things too. But anything that has a power source, a wavelength like that. I've had people tell me all different kinds of things, and I've seen that myself. Cell phones, that's becoming another very common one for people. Getting a strange text message, or, the cell phone just going blank, or if there's ringtones or different things like that, sometimes that will show up. Sometimes it is more through nature. Butterflies are very common. Hummingbirds, bees, those kinds. Sometimes it's easier to, project that energy to that and have some synchronicity there. Sometimes it's things that are very personal too. I'll tell you one that was very personal. Was I had a client whose husband passed over, and her husband was Scottish and loved all things Scottish, the culture. And at his funeral, it was outdoors, or a burial, I should say, out of nowhere, not right where they were, but pretty close to where they were on the street in front of the cemetery. There was a man who walked up and started playing the bagpipes, just kind of out of nowhere. And they truly felt that that was a sign that he was with them. And, and then just kind of wandered off, and no one seemed to know who it was. But, things like that are kind of uncanny. Like, how could that happen? But they're pretty good at it. I had another client, this was a good one, who every single night for like 2 weeks, her television would turn on in the middle of the night. And she'd be sleeping and she'd hear the television on, and she'd go out and just sit and watch it. And she knew it was her father, because her father would, during his last years of life, would just sleep in front of the television. But things like that are often pretty strong messages from our loved ones that they're with us.
That's so beautiful, getting those kind of messages so you can start piecing that together and developing that relationship and that communication.
Yeah, absolutely. All kinds of things, birds and coins, and it is fun too. It can be a really interesting way to open those doors and have fun with your loved one, because they love to make us laugh and surprise us. And it's one of the things I've seen that really can help people to lift out of their sense of, their loved one no longer being with them, of that loss. It can help them to feel so much closer.
Now, in your book, you mention life review, the soul review. And I know a lot of people have a lot of fear around that. They're like, well, it was kind of pretty crummy before I became enlightened, or maybe I've done some really bad things that I'm ashamed of. What are some thoughts you have around the soul review?
Initially, I wanted to write a book just about the soul review. Initially, that was my really aim to do that. So a lot of the book is about the soul review, but it's not completely. I changed that as I went. But one of the reasons I wanted to talk about that was because we do have fear surrounding it, and it's not really, there's not a lot of information out there about it. So I wanted to provide some. And what I have, let me tell you the other reason too. And when I think about it, is when it's a long story. I talk about this in the book. But my ex-husband passed over, and he probably was one of the reasons I decided to write about the soul review, because within a day or two of his passing over, which was a complete surprise, and we had been not together. I mean, we had only been separated for a few years. This was someone who I went through so much with, and there were big challenges in the relationship, and we ended up no longer being together, but there was so much unresolved things that we never spoke about that needed to be worked through. And so his passing was a shock, because he was not very old. I didn't know that he was ill at the time. We were in that state where we weren't together, but we were still both processing, I guess, what happened. And he passed over, and he came to me pretty actually right at his passing. But then he started to come to me every morning and go through the soul review with me, and what he was learning about himself and about me and about why we had been together, what lessons that he was there to learn, and what maybe he didn't know at the time, and I became aware of the things as he told me these things. I became aware of the things that I didn't know. I started to see things in a new way. I started to understand the relationship better. And it brought us to a place of so much more acceptance and forgiveness and love. And that really perked my curiosity about the soul review, because it was so healing for both of us to go through that. And obviously him more than me, in the way that he was, in a whole different place with it. But what I learned about it is that it is an incredibly loving, whole experience that helps us to see ourselves and know ourselves and everything, the choices we've made, the things we've done, through a completely different lens than how we judge ourselves in the physical life. What we're doing, the choices we make, we don't understand the full extent of the purpose behind that. And we can't understand it through the human understanding, because it's actually a spiritual process of love, forgiveness, and our journey toward more divine energy, our journey into love, that divine presence. And we're met with incredible amount of love on the other side. No matter what we've done, what we've experienced, the presence is always one of love. And it's not a judgment in the way that we suffer or we look at ourselves and we feel horrible inside or completely guilty or, I really messed up there. It's not really like that. We do become aware of choices we made that were not, we could have made different choices that perhaps would have felt more loving. And we do become aware of that, but it's hard to translate through our human, the way we look at things and judge ourselves and others, that even in that, there is an incredible amount of love always being broadcast to us in a healing way. And the other thing is we lift into our higher self too. We lift into a part of us that we're not very familiar with here. And that's the one, that's who we feel we are. When we're in the human world, we feel that we're that person that shows up every day and struggles and tries to get through stuff. And it's not always easy. But when we're in spirit, that's not who we are. So our perception of self is so different too. But it's even, the hardest critic we have, even on the other side, is ourselves too. And it's not a critic in the way we experience it here. It's more of this gentle prodding toward love and forgiveness for ourselves. So it's a beautiful, wonderful experience. And that was one of the other things I wanted to include very much so in the book, was how we don't kind of always have to wait till we pass over to start working with some of that energy of the life review, and how beneficial it can be to us to do that.
That's so important. I just love the information you have in regards to just the life review, soul review, and soul contracts. You even talk about how we can get relationship advice from our soul review, which I was stunned when I saw that.
A lot of it is about that, though, because that's how we're working it all out, is with others.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So when you talk about relationship advice from the soul review, is that in any relationship? Is it mostly love relationships? What does it look like?
Oh, it's every relationship, everyone we encounter, we have some kind of soul contract with. Now, obviously, in the love relationships, romantic relationships, parental, our children, siblings, not so much siblings. Sometimes it just depends. Sometimes more so than other, and sometimes even, parents and all more so than others. But there's always a soul contract there. And the life review helps us to become aware of that, what that is and what that was. And it helps us to, because that's what happened to Kenny and I, my ex-husband, that's one of the biggest benefits that I received. And that's why I feel he came to me to work it out with me, was because it really helped me to understand why we had been together, why we had the challenges we did, and how I could continue my life here in the physical with that new awareness and be more loving to myself and to others, and to do further healing for myself too. Um, but yeah, yeah, just trust that every relationship that you're in, there's definitely a deeper purpose, and the key is always love and forgiveness, and really taking our power in relationships to care for ourselves too. That was one of my big lessons. That's why I say that. I've been deficient in that in relationships. I care so much for others, and I hadn't always been there for myself. So that was one of the things that I really learned from that process with him.
I think a lot of people can relate to that, where you're giving, giving, giving all the time,
Right.
and
Yeah.
your cup is empty,
Hmm. Absolutely.
I love the end of the book where you have the prayer section. Is this something that you felt like you channeled? Because these are so helpful.
Yeah, I'm really glad you like that.
I
I just
do.
laughed because, whoa, where did that come from? Um, that was absolutely from someplace deep because, oh gosh, I got so just so, oh, I don't know what the right word is, just kind of pulled into those prayers and just felt it from such a deep level. Yeah, I'm so glad that that came through. Yeah. I
Yeah,
don't take too much credit for it, because it certainly wasn't me. But yeah, I'm glad you liked it.
No, I really thought it was just a beautiful way to have a conclusion for this book, is by providing these, because they do feel so heartfelt. And as you're reading them, and they're for different things: prayer for a child, prayer for moving on, prayer for forgiveness. I mean, I think a lot of times when we get stuck, we need that additional help, and prayer is a good place to be.
Absolutely, it really is, and it really helps too.
Oh, yeah, without a doubt. I'm a
Yeah.
real big believer in that. Well, and what final thoughts do you want to leave our listeners with, Sherrie?
Well, like I was saying at the beginning, that pay attention to your grief right now. I really feel there's so much grieving happening, and we don't always recognize it as grief. We might feel it as depression or sadness or even despondency or anger. And pay attention, because if we can acknowledge, yeah, I'm grieving, even though I haven't had a personal loss, or there's something's being triggered and I'm grieving, and to work with it more, to kind of listen to it, let it be a journey, let it be a wise, loving voice in you that can lead you into something more loving, forgiving, and a new awareness about yourself and others.
Well, what a beautiful way to talk about your book and to end our discussion. Sherrie, thank you so much for being
Thank
here
you.
with us. Where can our listeners connect with you and learn about your book, I'm Still With You, and be part of your community?
Oh, I would love that. Well, my website is Sherrie Dillard, SherrieDillard.com. I've got a blog that I post pretty regularly, which is sherriedillard.me. Um, Sign up for my newsletter on my website. I'm on Facebook and Instagram, and I post pretty regularly. So yeah, I'd love to connect with people more. Thank you.
Well, thank you for taking the time to be on the show with us here today, Sherrie.
Yes, thank you, Marianne. I really, really appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Sherrie. It's been such an honor to spend this time with you, and of course, to talk about your new book, I'm Still With You. I'm Still With You is available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and select indie retailers, and of course, you can get it on Kindle. Well, on that note, we're going to pause here for a quick break, but you want to stay tuned for our next special guest, Shannon Yrizarry, who's here to talk with us about her book, Psychic Yoga, and how you can use yoga poses to activate your chakras. You've been listening to Moments with Marianne. We'll be right back after these messages.
Internationally recognized and award-winning author Judy Goodman works and teaches outside the box of limited thinking. Working with people from every walk of life, her goal is to empower you to be the best you can be, no matter what the challenge is. Born with the gift of seeing beyond our normal vision, she has an extraordinary gift of working with every challenge. Teaching beyond conventional wisdom, her work is described as life-changing. Visit judygoodman.com. That's judygoodman.com.
There comes a moment when you realize you're somewhere special, when you discover that each beautiful creature that you see has been rescued from a life of absolute horror and brought to this incredibly free place. Here's where their lives were forever changed and where yours will as well. Discover over 500 tigers, bears, and lions at the brand new visitor center at the Wild Animal Sanctuary just outside Denver. For more information, visit wildanimalsanctuary.org. Discover true freedom at the Wild Animal Sanctuary.
Have you ever had the sense that your thoughts might actually be doing something? Ancient secrets of manifesting have been masterfully revealed in the award-winning book Manifesting 123 by Ken Elliott. For the first time, the author's experiences and stories in this book describe exactly how your thoughts can create anything. You've been doing this all your life, but it's never been fully explained for you until now. Visit manifesting123.com for more information today. Manifesting123.com.
Welcome back to Moments with Marianne. We're here today with our next special guest, Shannon Yrizarry, who's here to share with us her new book, Psychic Yoga: Ignite Your Intuition with Chakra and Energy Work. Now, Shannon has taught metaphysical subjects since 2013, including deep esoteric lineage of Kundalini Yoga. She has worked as a healer, clairvoyant, and card reader, and has been featured as a dream interpreter on Viceland's Nuts and Bolts show, as well as for Mercedes-Benz and Refinery 29. She has read tarot for the Zoe Report, done readings for stars, and aims to bring empowering wisdom of astrology mainstream. So let's welcome to the show, Shannon Yrizarry.
Thank you, Marianne. It's great to be here.
You know, what an honor it is to have you here and to talk about this book. I love this book. I mean, once I picked it up, I couldn't put it down. And it's about time that someone kind of bridged yoga and psychic abilities. And I have to ask you, what inspired you to write this book?
Well, I guess that what you're saying there is that it was missing. I knew a lot of yogis that didn't really have an understanding of intuition. And then I knew a lot of psychics that didn't have any movement practice. And when I was doing 7 readings a day, the only way I could get through it was by doing yoga. It really helped me have the energy to do it. And that experience kind of led to the idea of the book.
So have you always been psychically gifted and this just seemed to dovetail nicely together?
You know, I was very empathic growing up, and I didn't know that that was intuition or how to use it. And I took some classes to understand how to not take on people's emotions. And then I was able to understand how intuition can be used to help other people. I didn't just know how to use it, I guess. And, you know, a lot of people wonder if it's something you're born with and you have it or you don't, but it's definitely something that everyone has that they can develop by understanding how to develop it.
Well, I'm so glad you said that because that's a question that I hear often, and it's nice to be able to address this. But let's break this down a little bit. So why don't we start with what yoga is exactly? Because I think a lot of people get a little confused by that. Some people think it's like a spiritual practice or a religion or it's exercise. So what is yoga?
That's a great place to start, and that's where the book starts too, because there's a lot of confusion about that. And people generally think of yoga as stretching and, the poses that we see people doing. However, traditionally, yoga was about, I like to think of it as biohacking, right? And if we can move the body in certain ways to get the energy to amplify, just like you would want more energy in a supercomputer than you would in a little laptop, that's the way the body can function. And yoga is a way to get the parts to move into the proper places so that we can have expanded consciousness. With any religion or no religion, you can use yoga to expand creativity, to tap into a greater understanding of what it means to be human. And it's something that you don't have to give up your belief system or ascribe to a new belief system to do, which is why I like it.
Yeah, without a doubt. Yoga can be such a great practice to have every day. Is this something that you're suggesting people do? Is, kind of have that yoga practice paired with their psychic work on a daily basis?
I think doing something daily just makes sense. Like, we brush our teeth to get the bacteria out of our mouth so we don't get bacteria buildup. And energetic maintenance is the same. We have these daily cycles that we sleep and eat with, and to take care of our emotional side on a daily basis just makes sense to me. However, the way that I approach it is not about pushing and exerting yourself really with a lot of force, because the last thing that people really want right now is to feel like they have one more thing to do. And this approach, as you're reading through the book, is more about relaxing into the pose in a way that just tunes you into the present moment. It's a way to become present and decompress, to manage your stress in a very major way. And what a lot of people don't know about yoga is that it traditionally included meditation and breathing exercises. So it's not all about being able to do a headstand or a crow pose. So the book helps people understand that sitting and breathing is also yoga.
So before we get too far ahead, because I can easily do that with this book. I mean, there's so much great information. When we talk about psychic yoga, what is that? What is that pairing?
So I think the term psychic sometimes is a loaded term. So I want to break that down for a second. Some people only think of the term psychic as a prediction of the future, but it really is just about activating the ability to expand your consciousness and perceive in a more creative way. And when we pair that with yoga, it means that we're expanding our creative ability through a simple daily practice. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that completely makes sense. So I can see how that would all come together. Well, and you mentioned something that I'd like to talk about. You talked about breathing practices, and you have exercises in your book that talk about activating our intuition. Why don't you share some of those with us?
Sure. So breathing practices are something that has been used in many different cultures to access altered states of consciousness. And I wanted to give people an opportunity to try some of these at home, but, starting out, it can be challenging to even take a full breath of air because we haven't necessarily developed the muscles between the ribs to do that. And so doing really rigorous breathing exercises can give you like a side cramp or make you feel out of breath. So the breathing exercises in this book are really great to start out with and work on for a while so you can create this endurance so that you could do something more intense, like 30 minutes of breathing. So one of the ones that I included is called a 1-minute breath. And this 1-minute breath, to start out, you could just simply breathe in for 5 seconds, hold your breath for 5 seconds, and breathe out for 5 seconds. And that process starts to build a little bit more of the ability to take in more oxygen as you're breathing. And oxygen is considered a life force energy. So you're automatically going to get more energy, feel more positive and creative just from doing that simple breathing exercise. And it's called 1-minute breath because eventually you'll be able to breathe in for 20 seconds, hold it for seconds, and then breathe out for 20 seconds, which is actually a lot more challenging than it sounds.
Well, that sounds very challenging, actually, Well, and so when we talk about our chakras, and in your book, Psychic Yoga, you talk about how the chakras are the doorway to our intuition. Why is that?
So from a nuts and bolts standpoint, because yoga has endured for thousands of years, they've had a long time to start to understand the energy of the body, because for the longest time, all yogis did was study it for many generations. And so they understand how the main systems of the body, like the nervous system and the muscles and the hormones, can become harmonized so that our energy centers will essentially, just like a light switch, turn on, and then our whole energy system is amplified so that we can tune into energy around us, making us intuitive. And, I really can't take credit for coming up with this at all, because these poses are very sophisticated in that they activate each of those main energy centers in our body so that all of them in a line become active. And then where the intuition, like they call it the seat of intuition, is in our brain, can suddenly turn on like that light switch. Because without that light switch on, intuition is very hard to access. But we need all of those main points in the body to become energized in order to get that one part to turn on. So I look at it as that nuts and bolts process of, okay, I got to get this one on, and then this one on, and then this one on. And then finally, we'll get where we want to go.
Well, that's so important, because you can actually kind of, really plan where it is you're going in your psychic growth. Right.
And I think when people approach intuition development, a lot of times it's just with guided meditations, and there's not like the added benefit of getting the body to give you that boost so that your energy turns on. And I don't think that it's quite as easy to develop intuition without getting your physical system to support it. So it's, without a question, in my experience, unbelievably helpful. When I first started giving readings, Marianne, I would meditate for about 20 minutes a day. And I'll tell you that the information came, but it was kind of obscure and not very much. And then when I started doing more breath work and more yoga and meditation, I had more information to give people in one session than I could give them. And it was easy to give it to, to give them information. I'm like, okay, what do you want to talk about first?
I'm sure. I mean, you're probably getting so much,
Yeah. And, like for those of us who want to use our intuition to help other people or just to make better decisions in our own life, this is a surefire and simple approach, because very vague concepts about, tapping into other dimensions and those type of theories, it feels like something we have to wrap the mind around and comprehend, whereas yoga gives us the actual experience of intuition. So you're just sitting there and boom, you get information. It's kind of fun.
I love that. Well, and a lot of times people say, well, am I getting this information? Am I really getting it? Or, they sometimes don't seem to really trust what it is they're getting. So what advice do you have for that?
That's a really great question, because especially for people that, are just so compassionate and they know they have intuition, but they're hesitant to help other people with it. Some great advice that I got was, don't second guess your first impression and don't censor the information that comes through. So a great way to realize that your intuition is accurate is to just keep a daily journal of your impressions. And then you'll start to notice that, oh, wow, that was accurate. So was that. It didn't make any sense at first, but now I see that it was there for a reason. And the intuition is really funny because it'll sometimes give you little bits of information that can seem very random. And even in a reading, like somebody will give you something that to them will seem completely left field. Like, okay, I'm seeing a red dragon on a wooden shelf, right? And if they were afraid that they are wrong, they probably wouldn't say that. But, for that person that they're giving the reading to, oftentimes that means something very significant to them. So the best advice is don't censor what comes through. Don't judge it. Just relax and trust that it's coming for a reason. And the more relaxed you are about your intuition, the easier it flows.
So you have all the chakras lined out for different things and different yoga exercises that can happen with that. And I love the little drawings, by the way, that go with each of them. It really spells out like how to do the pose. So why don't you share with us like one or two that you really, that you think is very helpful, or maybe something that people right now can do at home?
Sure. So the pose that I've kind of been looking at to give us an example for the book is mountain pose, because it's surprisingly helpful for intuition and it is surprisingly easy. And what it is basically is standing. And the way that the pose is explained gets us so honed into our body in a more intimate way, because we're focusing on the feet, the hips, the back of the neck, the way that the chest is pulled in when we engage in our stomach, and our breathing, and then our actual intention and awareness all at the same time. And that helps give us an intention to approach a seemingly simple pose with. And each of the poses in this book are approached in this way that brings us into the body to help us develop a relationship with our body, that we will actually have this back and forth, just like you and I are communicating. We have this back and forth, hey, the body's telling me something. Oh, I better listen. Why is it feeling tense? Or, maybe I need to do a yoga pose because my stomach is tight and there's some emotion that's trying to talk to me there. So in mountain pose, it's a grounding pose, and our feet are connected to the earth. And then our spine is straight and for for those of us who use computers, which is most of us, getting the opportunity to really align our bones will allow us to already start to feel a different energetic sense about being in our body. And the first way that intuition comes is through our body itself, like through the actual physical sensations of the body. And although it doesn't speak in words, there's this basically communication system that's very organic that starts to happen when you are in a pose. So, I encourage people that are going through the book to not just read the instructions of the pose, but to read what I write about it in addition to that, because it'll give a new perspective that you won't get in a yoga class when you're moving quickly from pose to pose. So it's really slowing it down.
So when you're slowing down your poses, are you actually intuitively connecting with that energy and feeling the flow? Is that what you're doing? So that people are like, okay, like I'm focused on my heart chakra. I could feel the flow through my heart as I'm doing this pose.
Well, it definitely will happen over time that you start to feel that flow. But to be honest, it took me a while to feel the flow, as you say. But the way that I guide people to shift their focus will start to enable that process. Because if you're in a pose and you're thinking, am I doing this right? There's no way you're going to pick up on the energy of your heart chakra. So if you're in a pose and you're not comparing yourself to other people in class who might be doing it differently, right? We've all done that.
Oh, yeah.
But if you're in the pose and you're thinking, okay, maybe right now, since I'm doing this heart chakra pose, I can release sadness and I can release any thoughts that I'm not good enough or I don't deserve to be happy. I'm just going to release those right now. You're going to start to open that energy center with that intention. And then throughout the course of doing the poses for the heart chakra, you will start to feel these energetic sensations, which are really cool and surprising because I didn't grow up knowing about energy. And then when I would have these like energetic sensations in a yoga class, I'd have to ask the teacher, what in the world was that?
And hope they know, right? So.
Right. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
And it is kind of fun if you have like some chakra that's blocked and the energy starts to move again, because it's you can actually feel energy, not in a painful way, just as electricity.
Yeah. No, I get it, because I think a lot of times, especially now, people have anxiety, there's stress, there's been so much going on, and for a lot of people, while things are changing outside, a lot of people are still kind of staying inside just out of, the utmost precaution. So there's all this stress of being like confined to places or within ourselves. And so we're feeling these blockages. And it's, interesting because I was doing some of these poses and it really felt like I could feel like energy release as I was focusing on that. And I love how you have like the prep for the meditation before each pose and then also the wrap up for that. And I'd love for you to speak on that.
Yes. So the preparation helps to make sure that we set an intention before we do something, so that we kind of get an idea of, well, what is the point of this in a way that's going to help me feel better? Instead of focusing on, man, I need to touch my toes. Why can't I touch my toes? But this is an approach that will say, okay, how is this energetically going to bring more positivity into my life while I do this pose? And then we do the pose, and we may or may not actually get to do the full pose because it's new and we might not do it perfectly. But then after the pose, we'll do this, recap where we say, okay, where was my mind during the pose? and not in a way to beat ourselves up about it, but to start to bring more awareness to the actual ability to be present. Like you were saying, I'm in the pose and I feel some type of energetic release. And so the more we start to pay attention to, oh, wow, my mind drifted to my to-do list while I was in the pose, instead of just doing the pose, we then start to create this new habit of tuning into our energy. And a lot of the focus in the wrap-up of each pose in the book will ask, were you breathing? Were you focusing on your breathing? Because, and especially in times like these where we're stressed, one of the body's responses to that is to hold our breath. And so when we're doing a pose, if we can really do deep, slow breaths, even doing 1 or 2 poses a day will take some of that weight and that heaviness that we're feeling off of ourselves in an actual way, like a tangible, I experienced it, I really want to do that again way.
Well, I get the whole holding your breath. I must be stressed when I do yoga quite often because I find myself holding my breath as I'm doing poses because you're trying to get the pose right. And for a lot of people, they're just like, oh, you just make some, hand, motions, what have you. But it is real intense. You have to really focus on, your body's control. And it's very interesting because as you're like, attempting to do these poses, like there are poses I can do that other people can't and vice versa based on how our body type is. So, I think it's a good thing not to really kind of compare to what our neighbor's doing because they may be just structurally different than we are.
Oh, totally. And I think too, in our culture, in school, we're constantly competing for the Presidential Physical Fitness Award and for the best grades for valedictorian and things like that. And that mindset that's conditioned into us to think, okay, well, if I'm doing it right, I'm going to do it better than or as good as someone else. That mindset is something that this book will help us get away from because the benefits, like the real positive energy and intuition that comes from the practice of yoga doesn't need any of that competition mindset. It's actually really all about, okay, do less, simplify it more, pull back, don't push so hard, which was hard for me at the beginning, and I'm still working on that.
I think we all are, so. Well, and I know a lot of times when people, they think, oh, I'm going to start working on my spiritual development and psychic development. I'm just going to go for the chapter that has poses for the third eye chakra. Mm-hmm. I mean, and I know you have that chapters laid out in a certain way. Is there a specific flow that happens so they can gain mastery over some of the other chakras before they start working on the third eye?
Yes. I would say to start with the root chakra is a great approach to this. And that's why, the book sequentially goes from the root chakra to the crown chakra and then the aura. However, I also encourage people, if they feel like for some reason I need to go right to this chapter, to do that, because this is an intuitive process and there's not one specific trajectory for any one person. So if somebody feels like, nope, I'm starting with the aura chakra chapter and I'm just going to do that, I would say that to go with your gut on how to approach this book and how to use this book. It doesn't have to be chronological, but if you do it chronologically, it does build upon itself to give you an understanding of, the levels of healing that can happen in the chakras. So if you start with the root chakra where it talks about creating stability and overcoming fears and things like that, then you have a foundation to work from. And you also have the grounding so that when the upper 4 chakras where our intuition really starts to ignite. When those chakras become activated, we have this stableness of self so that we don't feel like there's too much energy.
Yeah. You're not like frying your circuits,
Exactly. And we do need to realize that it's not just the third eye chakra that needs to be active to have intuition. All of the chakras need to be active and balanced to have a balanced sense of intuition. While the third eye chakra allows us to see images in our mind, other chakras will pick up information from people in a way that we feel what they're feeling. So if somebody is having anger, we're actually going to feel their anger in our stomach and around our hips. So that would be something we need the lower chakras active for.
Well, it's so good to know. You have so much great information in this book. What final thoughts do you want to leave our listeners with?
Let's see. So I guess given the time that we're in right now, I think what a lot of people are looking for is a source of positivity, source of inspiration, and some guidance. And I think that for the purposes of this book, while that's not the only thing that this book can offer, it can right now offer that. And it's something that can, be found pretty quickly and pretty easily at home, which a lot of us are right now. So that's what I wanted to say to people, just to give them something that they can do that's easy at home.
Well, Shannon, my goodness, it's been such a delight to spend this time with you. Where can our listeners connect with you and be part of your community and learn more about your book, Psychic Yoga?
The best way to find my information is on my website, shannonyrizarry.com. And I definitely, encourage people to find the book through local bookstores to support the small businesses. And I have more information about what I do on a daily basis, virtual classes on my Instagram, which is Shannon Yrizarry as well.
Well, Shannon, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate talking about the book with you, and I'm so glad that you got a chance to do some of the poses.
Well, thank you, Shannon. It has been such an honor to spend this time with you and, of course, to talk about your book, Psychic Yoga. Psychic Yoga is available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and all indie retailers, and of course, you can get it on Kindle. Again, if you'd like to connect with Shannon, you can at shannonyrizarry.com for more information. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I would like to thank everyone for tuning in. You're listening to Moments with Marianne. And remember, make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary. A recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Moments with Marianne airs every Sunday, Monday, Thursday, and Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern and 5 p.m. Pacific Time. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.